And hey, Geoff.
Hey, how you going?
I'm okay. I think we possibly might be live. Let me just double check. Make sure this thing's still working. How have you been?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Let's have a look. I think we're live, Geoff. Let me give a quick introduction to you, and we'll get started. So, I guess whether you're just joining us or you've been with us from the beginning, you've been a critical part of the startup journey of Meat Magic in helping us get to our first milestone of donating over $1 million to charity, which is, for me, it's nuts. I started Meat Magic in 2017 with a goal to create a sustainable fundraising stream for charities. And it's been one hell of an incredible journey. I think, at Meat Magic, we basically enable meaningful connections. And today, I've obviously got Geoff Wenborn from MoveBank with me, who's going to talk to us about what information he looks for when he speaks with vendors and details about what he cares about, both personally and professionally. Geoff, good morning.
Good morning, Carl. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're live here because I can't really see too much of what's going on the other screen. But I think we're good.
Yeah, my screen says everyone can see and hear you, so hopefully that means you're live.
So beautiful. So Geoff, I mean, we've got half an hour, so I'm really grateful for your time. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is, because obviously you've been a great supporter of us. So tell us a little bit about your role over there at MoveBank.
Yeah, so actually I'm not necessarily at MoveBank now. I've sort of been doing CIO strategic advisory work for the last little bit of time, and MoveBank was one of those roles. But I think, Carl, I might sort of start by going back to the Meat Magic intro that you did. So I've been associated with Starlight since about 2007. And a big part of that has been trying to get better outcomes from the investments in IT, and that's been like a journey in itself, and a really pleasing one over time with the growth of Starlight as well. And then, of course, with the advent of the Meat Magic idea, I guess, and the way you've introduced that, the opportunity to grow the level of donations through the ability to bring in the IT industry from my perspective, and I know it's broader than that, has just been fantastic. So it's kind of why I was smiling at the beginning, because it's just such a great story, and something I didn't think was possible going back to the early days when I was involved. We were just trying to save a few dollars here and there, and get better results. So yeah, look, starting there, and the way that I really got engaged into the Starlight IT advisory board, I guess, was really around, my role has been a CIO or a leader of digital technology transformation in multiple organizations over quite a long period. And, that's, I guess, partly why, we're having the conversation. Yeah. But so that background, I began, when technology was still sort of basic punch cards, I know it ages me a lot, but learning the industry from the ground up, it's always really been about information and how to make better use of information and how to give that insight to the customers that your organisation is trying to deal with. And the IT leader role has always been about trying to make that better, quicker, faster, and more pertinent to the business outcomes. So that's really been my background, which has often resulted in being the senior digital and technology person, or the CIO, or the chief digital officer, whatever the title might be, or the leader of a digital transformation program. Covering many different fields over that period.
So, I mean, let's go back to the digital transformation stuff. I just want to check something. I'm not sure we've got sound happening. But I think we're good. I'm hoping people can hear us okay. I've just got a message to say we've got no sound, but we'll just keep going, and hopefully it will. It won't be a problem. So back to digital transformation, Geoff. I mean, everybody seems to be on a journey at the moment, a digital transformation journey. There's a lot of talking around. Everything's changed, of course. So how do you see? I mean, people talk about being on a digital journey, but do you think everybody's actually on one? Because it seems to be a lot of talking about being on one, but whether or not most CIOs or CEOs are actually on that journey today. Do you think there's a lot more to be done in that space?
Oh, yes. Like, look, from my perspective, technology has always been about, computing has been about bits and bytes. It's always been digital, and it's always really been about getting value from, digital technology investment. And really that means getting information to customers. What's changed, recently is really now that's through so many channels. It used to be, just a branch-based screen and someone had to go somewhere to get that information. Now we get it in our phones. It's updated every day. And, it works for us. It works against us, so it's not necessarily harnessed the way it could be to maximise the outcomes. But yeah, for organisations that have been investing in sort of business processes that manage customers, the journey is not complete by a long shot. And I also think that, the definition, digital transformation is just a nebulous term. To me, you've got to be really focused on what problem you're actually solving when you're investing in, new technology or digital capability.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot to be done in that space. I don't think it ever ends. I think it's I've been in the technology space for 20 odd years, and networks have all. I started off my career in the networking industry, so we were selling bits and ports and pipes to companies, to banks, and so on. And the industry is still there. It's just transformed and gone into a different space. I don't think it ever change. I don't think it ever ends. It's a constant update, or there's always something new that's come out that you need to adopt, because that's where your customers have moved to. And if you don't move with your customers, you're going to be in a bit of trouble. So, I mean, how do you actually define what success looks like in a transformation? Because we often hear of people spending $1 million on a new bit of software and nobody using it. But it's how do you define what a successful transformation looks like?
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity in recent times to participate, at executive and board level around, investments in, strategic transformation for their organisations, and that is a really good point. How do you define it? So, and I use the language, what problem are you solving? For me, it's about future sustainability and the ability to stay current to the market. So, if you've got a technology or digital and technology platform that can manage through disruption and be agile with changes to business process and shocks to the system and all sorts of, the world's a volatile place. So, there's no pre-described, here's the perfect answer, but for me, it's the ability to stay current with the pace of change and not get continually investing, massive amounts of money in we will deliver this program and in 2 years everything will be fine, because that never works. It's got to be a continuous investment process that enables you to stay current with the pace of the market. And I do think that technology is evolving. Probably technology sales, digital salesmen have said this all along, but at one point we will get there where enterprises will be able to adjust the pace of change, with minimum configuration issues with their technology environment.
Yeah, well, look, Geoff, I'm an old man now. I'm 52. you know. And when I think about when I started my career in sales, you know, we'd have to print out we'd have to create a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'd print it out and bind it, and then we'd come and sit with Geoff, and we'd walk Geoff through that presentation. And there wasn't even laptops to present it on a board. You literally have a PowerPoint printed out that we would share with you. And of course, today, that's all changed. So my job back in the day, I mean, this is the whole Meet Magic story. My job back in the day was to pick up the phone and call Geoff and try and get some time in Geoff's diary and go and sit with Geoff and share some knowledge about the technology that we've got. And hopefully that resonates with you, and, you know, you can solve a problem with it. But today, of course, it's 2022. And Geoff's got access to all of the information that he needs. But it seems like those marketing people are still doing the same things as they used to do back in the day by still trying to stalk Geoff and get time in Geoff's diary. And what we're seeing, and I'll be curious to get your opinion on this, what we're seeing is that marketing really hasn't changed that much. They're still sending lots of emails. They're still making lots of cold calls. And by the time they get to you, it's like they've harassed you almost to the point where you're overwhelmed. Is that something that's happened? Because what we're seeing from execs is that they're getting over targeted, like every channel. It's phone, it's email, it's LinkedIn, and it's bordering on stalking. Are you seeing a lot of that?
Yeah, look, to be honest, that's absolutely true. So, you know, my phone number, mobile number, I've been, you know, CEO in a few different organizations, is in the public domain effectively. And so, you know, to be honest, unless I know who it is, I don't answer the mobile anymore, right. You know, because it's just overload. Even if you suspect you know the number and you haven't got it in your contact folder, it can be someone that you've never heard of before trying to sell you something you don't need at a time when you're not even looking for it. So it's just such a time waster. But, you know, I would say, you know, and again, I'm going to use the example of Meet Magic. I mean, there are, you know, and I've seen a few of these in recent times, there are, you know, different and innovative ways for vendors to connect with the right stakeholder. You know, so I've seen that through some Adapt conferences where, that, you know, normally, as I said, you know, if you're going to cold call me or you'll send me an email, I won't even look at it or answer it because I just haven't got time. But if there's sort of a domain where I might be interested in, and someone comes, you know, we've got a sort of a purpose model here where, you know, we can invest, you know, 45 minutes and there's an outcome for, you know, Starlight, for example. We've already mentioned Starlight through Meet Magic. Then I might say, yeah, I'll give that 45 minutes because I just want to understand a bit more about this particular offer, or, you know, it's pertinent to what I'm trying to do at the time. So I do think there's innovation in the way that, you know, execs can be contacted. Yeah. And I think it's probably, so, you know, sorry, Carl, for a long answer, but I think the other issue for me, which is really important, is the vendor relationships for senior executives in organizations who are investing a lot in their technology are really important. And to try and, you know, you really need to establish those relationships and value those relationships to get the best out of a partnership. And that is a lot tougher in the environment you've just talked about where it feels like stalking. So, you know, building those bridges is actually a critical part of it.
So in your experience, as the whole Meet Magic thing, having that baseline of starting off doing good, that's a good way to start a relationship for you?
Well, I think there's value in opening the door because, you know, even if I'm not really, you know, my time may not be. And to be honest, I think from our Meet Magic discussions, I'm not sure that it's resulted in any business but specific business. I think one example probably did, but, you know, but it was still worthwhile for my time because I understood more about this particular offer in an area where I was interested at the time. Yep. So it established, you know, a relationship that wasn't there by opening the door. And of course the benefit went to, you know, the charity.
It's really quite amazing. We're seeing execs do one meeting a week now. They're swapping one of their commutes. For example, if they're working from home twice a week, they just swap one of the commutes and have a Meet Magic meeting, and it's a new connection for them. They sort of treat it like a bit of networking and knowledge sharing, and that's really what they're meant to be about. They're not meant to be pitch fests where people can come in and expect a purchase order. The whole point of these meetings is new connections and to build, you know, for people like you that are busy, so you don't have to necessarily go to the conferences. And a big shout out to Jim Barry, because I know his Adapt conferences are really good. They're probably one of the few that are actually that are worthwhile going to. But But I know a lot of the vendors are spending a lot of money at these conferences in the hope that they can meet people like Geoff. But people like Geoff avoid that room like the plague, because they know that as soon as they hand over their email, they're going to get stalked.
Yeah, that's unfortunately true. So, yeah, but I think, my point was more that the relationships still need to be built, and there are ways, and that's really important to find the right way to connect, because that's still valuable.
Yeah, we've actually seen we did a podcast with Ian Robinson, the CIO of Water New South Wales recently, and some of the things that he mentioned about the meetings, I think he's had about 8 or so of these meetings, and again, not all of them have resulted in business, but a couple of them have. And that's really good, because it helped him solve some current problems in his current infrastructure. But what he said was really interesting for me, was the knowledge that he learned from the connections, because there were really sort of great connections with world-class tech companies. He learned so much that he was able to take that knowledge and apply it to future transformation projects or future infrastructure projects, and use that to attract talent into the business, which I thought was really interesting. So not only are the meetings being used for making new connections and connecting with industry, but they're actually being used for knowledge sharing in such a way that it's adding so much value to their day. They're attracting talent, which is, as you know, is one of the biggest problems at the moment, is finding. We've just gone through trying to find developers, and I'll tell you, it's not easy.
Yeah, well, that's a serious issue for us all, I think, just the dearth of talent right at the moment. I mean, there's a massive gap between, how many people are needed and how many are actually in the market with the right skills. So, and that's a significant issue, I think, more broadly than just our industry sector. It's an issue for the country.
So you mentioned that you're obviously the Starlight's a big deal for you. I mean, how did you get involved with Starlight back in the day?
Initially, I think I sort of, my kids went to school with the current CEO, so Louise Baxter. And I was in the process of moving on from NAB, and I had in a CIO role, I had a few weeks to spare, and I met Louise on Friday night drinks at the pub, I think. And she said, "Oh, well, let's have a chat," because she was talking about the challenges that they, in a charity organization, it's very hard to have the right expertise to know. Vendors try and help, but they're not always solving the problem that the charity needs in terms of, delivering a better outcome. So, and it can be expensive as well, unintentionally or, intentionally, I guess, from the vendor side. So, sort of lending your expertise into that kind of environment really appealed to me. I really love to have a purpose for using my skills. And, my skills are a bit weird because, I think spending your whole career in technology and digital transformation is a bit unusual, but, that's all I've done. So it was a really good fit.
Well, you must have gone from green screen to cloud. I mean, you've seen everything in between. I mean, that in itself is remarkable.
Yeah, so I think, that's where, that experience, I think, and, I guess my philosophies of, how to get value from technology are driven by the continual change. You've just described that's a massive shift in a generation, but lots of people are still using green screens. That's actually fundamentally an issue that we haven't solved, because, those businesses are struggling to stay alive, particularly with the amount of regulatory, oversight and investment in some cases. So, how do you keep your customer happy if the back office tools are nothing like what they have on their mobile device? So it's a struggle.
It's a really interesting space, Geoff, because the transformation stuff, I think when you start thinking about the way industry or different things are being redefined, we have to now look at the psychology behind what's happening. Even the whole work from home structure that's been around now. We've just spent 2 years working from home, pretty much. And now companies are expecting, their staff to go back into the office 5 days a week. The reality is, if you spent, 5 days a week working by the beach for the past 2 years, getting your job done, and then all of a sudden you're asked to go back in to the office and be away from the beach to get your job done, it's going to be a big tall ask. And then to have the option of working from home 2 or 3 days a week, it just makes it just, for me, the whole commute of going back into the office and spending 2 days on the weekend close to the beach, it's a trade-off that companies are never going to win. They're not going to win that because you've just spent 2 years getting your job done from home.
Exactly.
So I think it's going to be a difficult challenge to ask people to psychologically flip back and start traveling back into the office 5 days a week, and then only spend 2 days a week next to the beach.
Yeah. So, and I think, well, they might be next to the beach, but they're often really chained to the desk. So, the other thing is they've been very productive in that time, and they haven't had the disruption of commuting. And, now, as we've just talked about earlier, there is such a dearth of skills that they're just not going to do that. And I think you mentioned earlier another example where, you can, instead of commuting for an hour, you can give that over to doing something for purpose, like, having a meeting with Meet Magic. So, I think, there is an important social aspect to being in the office from time to time, but getting the balance right is really part of the challenge. But to be honest, my view is, most employees, particularly in this industry, are going to work for the organisations that support however they want to work, which would be, ideally a bit of a combination. And location will be sort of a secondary consideration.
I can't help but keep thinking about the value that we bring in these meetings, Geoff, because, if you're not traveling to work on a train or in a car, well, you're helping the climate. So even these video meetings or the working from home is good for the environment. I've just come from Singapore, where there's a carbon tax up there. It's $5 per ton of emissions. And when I think about the $700 that we donate to charity for every meeting, imagine if that $700 went to a carbon offset company or to remove carbon from the atmosphere. That $700 would remove 140 tons of carbon. So every business meeting could now offset 140 tons of carbon, or remove 140 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. I mean, that in itself is remarkable. The fact that we can help 18 sick kids in hospital is remarkable. In Singapore, each meeting feeds 10 low-income families for a whole month, which for me, it kind of blows my mind. I mean, we're kind of an unusual company because we give so much of our revenue away, but it's been going for 4 years now, and we're a team of almost 10, and we're proving that it can be done, and it's getting bigger. I think we've had a record. Vicky and the team this month have had a record month of number of meetings that have been booked, which means more money going to Starlight. I think we've done about 70 meetings, I think, this month, which is just remarkable.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic, and I think for anyone listening, those stats are just a fantastic sort of measure of how good this way of working is. And I think, to thinking through some of the other issues, from social benefit, like, you can talk about the carbon issue, but just, the simple, every time, we raise a certain amount of money, we give a sick child a benefit. And, I've been working at the moment where I've seen that, with COVID, it stopped some of the Captain Starlight rooms being open, and how taxing that is on the family, because they don't have any release from their, their continual sort of battle with the illness that they're challenged with. But more broadly, I think, there's so many innovative ways, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, but so many innovative ways which I think, the greater good can be delivered through, these kind of things. And if you think about how we're doing just this conversation compared to, when we both started in the industry, it just wasn't possible. So, it's leveraging the enablement that technology delivers, and then finding new ways to create value and social benefits. So, that's why I'm passionate about my industry and what I do. It's not quite, we're not quite there. As you said, it's a continual process. So,
yes, well, you're in Melbourne, aren't you? I mean, we got train strike.
No, I'm in Sydney, but I'm not going anywhere on the train. So.
Oh, right. So, I mean, we met your daughter in Melbourne a month or two ago, I think in May.
That's right,
and,
yes.
And she's an entrepreneur as well. Where did she get that drive from, do you think?
Look, I think, that she's had quite a tough, she's had quite a lot of challenges. She's incredibly resilient, but she's always had a really good conceptual technology mind. And I think the she does model herself to some degree on some of the things I've done, but I don't want to take any credit for her achievements. But so she's this. To be honest, the whole diversity conversation and the way that different perspectives add value to decision making and how that plays out. I think you can see that through. My daughter's younger. Obviously female, and it's come from a diverse set of sort of challenges, through her career, and incredibly resilient and incredibly driven. So, it's just amazing how, and then to me, you sort of bring that into, anywhere where you're making decisions about something, a new idea or how to get a better outcome, that kind of bringing that diverse thinking to someone like me who's been around a long while, might be fixed in my view, it's actually really fantastic. So, I just love the resilience and the passion and the effort that goes.
No, it really is. And I got that sense of that driven vibe from when I met with her in Melbourne at that event, which is really amazing. I mean, we're mostly a female team, apart from myself. We've got women who have come. They started out not even in tech. I mean, Vicky's not in tech, but now she's a head of customer experience. Hasn't come from that space, but has got the drive to actually make that happen. And Rebecca is the same. Doesn't necessarily come from tech, but is now in tech and just driven to to the point where it's you just get a sense of that desire to make it work. And that's we get really proud the fact that our team is they don't have all the 20 years of experience in a particular field, but they've got the drive and the determination because of the care of what we're doing to make it work, and that just makes me really proud. So Geoff, I mean, just to wrap things up, give some salespeople a couple of tips, because I know this is the big job. We're trying to redefine what meetings are, and I know when you mention the word meeting, people go, "Oh God, not again." This is staggering. There are 11 million meetings a month in America. That's around 55 million meetings a week, and that's around 1 billion meetings happening every year. The sad reality is that 71% of those meetings are classified as unproductive, no outcome, which is kind of crazy when you think about the number of execs that are spending time in these meetings. The actual salary cost alone is $37 billion of wasted time. That in itself would end homelessness in Australia when I think about it. So we're trying to redefine, the way a meeting is perceived, because we think that every new meeting should have a positive outcome, regardless of whether or not you're doing business together. There should be an impact, regardless of whether it's Starlight or the climate, or it could be anything. So what advice would you give to vendors or salespeople of how best to reach out to someone like you?
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting, because what I heard then, if you think about models like Uber or Airbnb, I mean, really they're business models where they're using unused capacity, finding new ways to leverage unused capacity. And what we're really talking about here is meetings, which are misused capacity mostly, because there's so much time wasting that goes on. So my key tips always for a vendor, firstly, is to be listening and really on point about what are the issues for the customer. And if you're on the vendor side, often that's not how you're driven, because you're driven to meet a quota or get get a number of meetings. That might then be a metric. So actually that metric might work for Meet Magic, because that would help you, Carl. But if you're the customer, that's not of any help whatsoever. So you really need your vendors to be on point about what problem they're solving that is a priority for you. And that does require some investment in establishing a relationship and time. But I'm not going to give any tips about how to track me down, if that's part of it, because, I think it just has to be pertinent, and it has to be a priority, and it has to have value. And I think if you've got that going, and then you can establish a relationship, you'll be successful. But if you go off script or try and flog something else, or take up time that's not necessary, it won't work. Eventually it won't work.
Well, I always say, Geoff, that the marketing teams are going down that whole lead generation path, which is completely wrong today, because it's a buyer's first world. You have access to all the information that you've got out there, and your peer group can tell you whether or not those products are any good. So it's really, you want to engage them on your terms, not their terms. And that's, I think, where things have shifted so much. And so I think for vendors, they have to come in with a different angle, different approach. It's not about them anymore. It's not about the product. It's not about them. It's about the connection and the partnership that you can be creating. And so I always say that, you know, your measurement of success is not in terms of how much product you've sold, but in terms of how many problems you've actually solved. And that's what we encourage them to do. No PowerPoints, no demos, none of that stuff. Go and have a conversation and talk.
I 100% agree with that. You know, to me, the best relationships are established when you're having a conversation, and it can be social. It doesn't even have to be around a product or a picture or a service.
Yep.
You know, it's often about, you know, what are the bigger issues that are out there and how can we work together on solving some of these things. And then if it happens to align with the, you know, the product or service or offering that you've got, then that's good. And if it doesn't, walk away. Don't waste more time. So that's hard.
Exactly, Geoff. You've been brilliant to us. I on behalf of Louise and Starlight. Hi, Louise, by the way. I always want to thank you for your support, and you know, all those meetings that you've done through us. You've been great for us, and you were one of the founding exec ambassadors for us, which is amazing. And you know, just getting to this point where we're at now is to think where we were a couple of years ago when we first started this. You know, we've gone from having, I think when we first kick-started this Meeting for Good campaign with Starlight in I think the end of November 2020, or sorry, the end of November 2019, we went into COVID in 2020. So around March 2020 time, we only had like 60 executives that were supporting us. And in those 2 years, from 2020 till now, there's over 1,000 in 4 countries, which it's remarkable, you know.
I still remember where I was when Matthew rang me and said, "What do you think about this idea?" I'm like, "Wow, this is great." So, you know, absolutely brilliant. That's great to hear.
It's beautiful. And we're just about to launch. Priyanka's been busy building our new platform, which is all finally ready to go. I think we've sort of doing a bit of maintenance on it, but it's almost ready to launch. And you know, for any exec out there that wants to get on board and be connected and be matched for conversations that actually have an impact, that's the whole point of the platform. And you know, I know you've already signed up to it, and you've been great help getting us with the beta testing. So we'll get you back on there once we've launched it properly again.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I think it's great.
But thanks so much for your time, Geoff, and thanks for sharing all your wisdom and your insights. We'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks a lot, Carl. Catch you later.
Take care. Bye bye.